Vladimir Putin has addressed the nation after what he called a failed mutiny and hailed his military for preventing a civil war.
You have defended our constitutional order, the lives, the security, and the freedom of our citizens. You have protected our motherland from upheavals. Effectively, you have stopped a civil war.
Putin held a minute of silence for the 13 airmen shot down as they approached the Wagner private mercenary group that was marching towards Moscow over the weekend. Russian authorities say they've since closed a criminal investigation into the armed rebellion led by Chief Yevgeny Prigozhin, with no charges against him or any of the other participants. Prigozhin said Monday they were marching, not waging a mutiny. Pope Francis's peace envoy is heading to Moscow. The Vatican says the visit Wednesday and Thursday aims to help find a solution to end the war in Ukraine. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says his troops have made gains in reclaiming Ukrainian territory on the front lines. His comments translated by Al Jazeera.
In all directions, our soldiers had an advance, and it's a happy day. I wished the boys more days like this. I was with the units in Khortytsia, and they distinguished themselves in the battle for Bakhmut. Heroically distinguished themselves. Well done, warriors.
Meanwhile, a report from the United Nations Human Rights Office says Russian forces carried out widespread and systematic torture of civilians who were detained in connection with its attacks on Ukraine and summarily executed dozens of them. The global body interviewed hundreds of victims and witnesses for the report unveiled today, detailing more than 900 cases of civilians who were arbitrarily detained in the conflict, most by Russia. The vast majority of those said they were tortured and in some cases subjected to sexual violence during detention by Russian forces. The report also documented 75 cases of arbitrary detention by Ukrainian security forces. More than half of those detained also reported being tortured or mistreated. The first United Nations independent investigator to visit Guantanamo Bay Detention Center says the 30 men held there are subject to ongoing cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment under international law. Irish law professor Fionnuala Ní Eolann said the 9/11 attacks in New York, Washington, and Pennsylvania, which killed nearly 3,000 people in 2001, were crimes against humanity. But the U.S. use of torture and rendition against alleged perpetrators and their associates in the aftermath violates international human rights law.
The U.S. government must urgently provide judicial resolution, apology, and guarantees of non-repetition. I observed that after 2 decades of custody, every single detainee I met with lives with the unrelenting harms that follow from systematic practices of rendition, torture, and arbitrary detention. The totality of all of these practices and omissions, they have a cumulative, compounding effect on the dignity and fundamental rights and freedoms of each detainee, and amounts, in my assessment, to ongoing cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment under international law.
She released a 23-page report about the inhumane conditions at Guantanamo Bay and said the use of torture against the remaining detainees there is a betrayal of the victims and survivors of 9/11. A new report on the deadly January 6 Capitol attack finds it could have been prevented, but the FBI and Department of Homeland Security dropped the ball when officials there downplayed and ignored a massive amount of intelligence before the attack. The report, called Planned in Plain Sight, was released by the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee today and says the agencies failed to warn of violence as some of then-President Donald Trump's supporters planned the siege openly online. The 106-page report by the panel's majority staff says the intelligence community has not still entirely recalibrated to focus on domestic threats rather than international terrorism. An audio recording of Donald Trump suggests he knowingly disclosed classified documents, rebutting his previous statements he declassified them. Trump faces espionage-related charges for hoarding boxes of classified documents at Mar-a-Lago and sharing some of them. Now a recording made at Trump's property in New Jersey exposes how casually he shared state secrets with others, including an aide and a writer. Here's a couple excerpts.
Wait a minute, let's see here. This totally wins my case, you know. Except it is like highly confidential, secret. This is secret information. But look at this. Well, with Milley, let me see that. I'll show you an example. He said that I wanted to attack Iran. Isn't it amazing? I have a big pile of papers. This thing just came up. Look.
Try to figure out
See, as president, I could have declassified
Yeah.
it. Now I can't, you know.
The recording is evidence in special counsel Jack Smith's indictment of Trump over mishandling classified data. I'm Christina Onnested reporting for Pacifica Radio.